What did it really mean to be called a delicatus in ancient Rome? This word, soft-sounding, almost elegant, masked a brutal reality. A delicatus was not simply a favorite or beloved. He was a possession, a young male slave chosen for his beauty, refinement, and poise, whose very existence was designed to please the powerful. Before we go deeper into this, tell me, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it for you as we step back into the streets of ancient Rome together? To the onlookers in the Forum or the patricians on Palatine Hill, these boys were not seen as human in the full sense. They were catalogued, priced, and displayed like expensive furniture or livestock. Public auctions were held in places like the Forum Boarium, near the Tiber River, where the smell of cattle dung mixed with the clamor of the slave market. There, under the open Roman sky, enslaved boys stood on platforms wearing placards around their necks, listing their origin, skills, and physical attributes for all to see. Many were taken as spoils of war: Greek, Thracian, Syrian, Phrygian. Others sold into bondage by families who could no longer feed them. Their value was not measured in strength, but in elegance, in refinement, in how well they could embody Roman ideals of grace. Their price could exceed that of land. Juvenal, the razor-tongued satirist of the 1st century CE, mocked the excess by writing, "A curly-haired boy costs more than a farm." His words were not only sarcasm. They were an indictment of an empire where human lives were bought and sold beside grain and cattle, where youth and beauty became commodities in a marketplace of power. Once purchased, the life of a delicatus became one of unrelenting oversight and rigid training. He might wear fine clothes, eat good food, and live in marbled villas, but he lived as property, not as a person. The boys destined for service in elite households were drilled into obedience, their every gesture and movement scrutinized. Their days were filled with grooming, performing, pouring wine, reading poetry aloud, attending banquets, or simply standing by as ornaments to display their master's wealth. In the private wings of Rome's most powerful homes, where senators plotted new laws, where generals schemed their campaigns, where poets performed, these boys lived under constant surveillance, trapped in gilded luxury. This was not a hidden practice. It was an institution. The Roman Empire didn't just tolerate this system, it made it part of the very machinery of status and power. The acquisition, training, and display of enslaved boys was built into the luxury economy of the elite. And for the most prized among them, things did not end there. In fact, this was only the beginning, because in the emperor's own household, mere possession was not enough. Castration as control, the imperial court's darkest secret. To Rome's ruling class, power had to be total. It wasn't enough to own someone's labor. They wanted to own their very body, to alter it so that rebellion was impossible, so that loyalty could never be divided. And so, in the shadowed corridors of the Palatine Palace, another figure emerged, the eunuch. These were boys and young men who had been physically altered, their manhood taken away, to ensure obedience and exclusivity. Within the imperial court, eunuchs, known as spadones, served as attendants, chamberlains, and guardians of the emperor's most private spaces. They were not a Roman invention, but a practice adopted from the East, from Parthia, from Asia Minor, a custom the Romans publicly sneered at while privately exploiting. Roman writers loved to condemn eunuchs as symbols of Eastern decadence and effeminacy. Yet the very men who wrote those critiques often employed them. Here lies the Roman contradiction. They could deride the practice as unmanly while making it a cornerstone of their own imperial administration. Legally, castration was banned under the Lex Cornelia. But law in Rome bent easily for the powerful. When elite households wanted a boy to remain forever youthful, forever pliant, the procedure was done quietly, and the state often looked the other way. Medical writers of the time say little about how it was done, but archaeological and textual clues leave no doubt. It happened, and it happened often enough that eunuchs became a visible class within the imperial system. As Rome's borders expanded, so too did the supply. Cappadocia, Phrygia, and the eastern provinces became prime sources. These boys were not merely servants. They were tools of power, symbols of domination, proof that Rome could reach into a person's very biology and reshape it to fit the empire's will. For countless enslaved youths in Rome, life inside the emperor's household was not one of privilege but of ritual, confinement, and silent labor. The emperor's slaves hidden lives in the imperial court. Stripped of freedom, severed from family, and robbed of identity, many boys were absorbed into the shadowy private world of the imperial elite, a world from which few ever resurfaced with a name of their own. One of the most striking examples was Sporus, a youth forced into the inner orbit of Emperor Nero. Suetonius, in the 12 Caesars, describes how Nero compelled Sporus to undergo physical alteration, clothed him in women's garments, and staged a public ceremony in which he presented him as his wife. Nero paraded him through Rome, seated him at banquets, and even renamed him Sabina, after the emperor's deceased spouse. Historians have long debated the meaning of this act. Was it obsession, cruelty, or pure theater? Nero asserting his dominance over life itself by bending human identity to his will? Whatever the interpretation, it revealed a chilling truth. In the emperor's hands, enslaved lives became living symbols in the performance of power, and Sporus was not unique. Roman sources make passing mention of others: Delicati, Spadones, Pueri Delicati, boys chosen for beauty, trained for service, and kept in the most intimate spaces of the court. Some writers spoke of them with disdain, others with admiration, but rarely with empathy. Their lives were acknowledged only in fragments, glimpsed through satire, rumor, or scandal. The imperial villa was no sanctuary. It was a stage for both splendor and abuse. Suetonius recounts that under Emperor Tiberius, the villa at Capri became notorious for disturbing rumors, tales of depravity, whispered excesses, and unchecked indulgence. While these accounts may reflect political bias, the persistence of such reports across multiple sources suggests that they were rooted in genuine unease about the exploitation that flourished behind palace walls. What made these lives especially tragic was the paradox they embodied: extreme visibility, yet absolute silence. These boys might be draped in silk, fed delicacies, and displayed beside emperors at public ceremonies. Yet their own voices never reached history. They could sleep on couches plated in gold, but they woke each day as property, with no will of their own. Roman society did not view their condition as abuse, but as refinement. To the Roman elite, owning such slaves was not a source of shame, but a badge of status and wealth. Their pain was repackaged as luxury, their submission reframed as elegance. The empire's obsession with image turned living, breathing people into decorations of prestige, human ornaments in the grand display of domination. To live as such a slave was to stand at the very heart of power, yet remain completely powerless. Admired, paraded, and controlled, never free. Their existence was a performance, curated to reflect a society where beauty was owned and power was measured by possession. Rome's trade in enslaved boys reveals an empire where culture and cruelty were woven tightly together, where art, law, and religion all worked to mask a system of control that reached into the most intimate corners of human life. And that leaves us with a haunting question. What would the silenced voices of these boys, these eunuchs, and these erased lives tell us about the true cost of Rome's greatness? What do you think? Was this simply the cost of empire, or a stain on Rome's legacy that we're still reckoning with today? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how you see this hidden side of Roman history. If you found this glimpse into Rome's darkest realities fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Vassal Truths. Together, we'll keep uncovering the human cost behind the glory and give a voice to that history tried to silence. Stay curious, because the past still has secrets, and it's up to us to listen.